Hey guys, Tech Freckle here again. Today I'm going to go over the improved styling with CSS portion of the course. Let's get started. In this unit, you will learn about intermediate topics in CSS and navigation design. The goal of this unit is to dig deeper into CSS and improve your ability to style websites. You will also learn about navigation design. After this unit, you will be able to apply more custom colors and fonts, style navigation elements like links and buttons, create secondary breadcrumb navigation. Introduction to colors. CSS supports a wide variety of colors. These include named colors like blue, black, and lime green, along with colors described by numeric value. Using a numeric system allows us to take advantage of the whole spectrum of colors that browsers support. In this lesson, we're going to explore all the color options CSS offers. Colors in CSS can be described in 3 different ways. Named colors, English words that describe colors, also called keyword colors. RGB, numeric values that describe a mix of red, green, and blue, and HSL numbers, or numeric values that describe a mix of hue, saturation, and lightness. We'll learn about and explore the benefits of each of these in depth using only named colors. You may feel like you're picking labeled crayons out of a box. By the end of this lesson, you'll feel like a painter mixing paints on a palette. Proceed to the next exercise when you're ready to begin. All right. Foreground versus background. Before discussing the specifics of color, it's important to make 2 distinctions about color. Color can affect the following design aspects: the foreground color, the background color. Foreground color is the color that an element appears in. For example, when a heading is styled to appear green, the foreground color of the heading has been styled. Conversely, when a heading is styled so that its background appears yellow, the background color of the heading has been styled. In CSS, these 2 design aspects can be styled with the following 2 properties. Color, this property styles an element's foreground color. Background color, this property styles an element's background color. All right, we know that from previous lessons. So let's do this. In the example above, the text of the heading will appear in red, and the background of the heading will appear blue. All right, style CSS change the foreground color of H1 heading to midnight blue. So H1 in here is the is H1 in this? Do we even have one? Oh, there it is. The best coffee regions. This is midnight blue. That does not look like midnight blue, but whatever. Wait, did you change the color? It's asking. What did I screw up here? Color. The heading, H1. Yeah. Why is it? Oh. I was going to say, that does not look like it. Next, set the background color with H1 heading to aqua. Okay, good. There wasn't an existing one. Notice only the background area behind heading changed. Yes, and that looks horrible. Hexadecimal. One syntax that we can use to specify colors is called hexadecimal. Colors specified using the system are called hex colors. A hex color begins with a hash character, which is followed by 3 or 6 characters. The characters represent values for red, blue, and green. In the value above, you may notice that there are both letters and numbers in the values. This is because the hexadecimal number has 16 digits, 0 to 15 instead of 10, 0 through 9. Like in the standard decimal system, to represent 10 through 5 or 10 through 15, we use A through F. Here's a list of many different colors and their hex values. Notice the black, white, and aqua are all represented with both 3 characters and 6 characters. This can be done with hex colors whose number pairs are the same characters. In the example above, aqua can be represented as 0FF because both of the first 2 characters are 0 and the second and third pairs of characters are both Fs. Keep in mind that all 3 character hex colors can be represented with 6 characters by repeating each character twice, but the same is not true in reverse. You can include hex colors just as you would include named colors. Background color 9932cc, and the letters can be uppercase or lowercase. Okay. In the browser is a web page that uses named colors and hex colors. We're going to translate the named colors into hex to be more consistent. The colors won't visually change yet. In style CSS, find the CSS rule that uses the named color dark sea green and change it to its hex color 8F BC8F. So this is dark green, sea green. Any other entries? Looks like it's it. Find the other named colors of the roast type and convert them into their hex values as shown here. Sienna. Saddle brown. Right. RGB colors. There's another syntax for representing RGB values, commonly referred to as RGB value or just RGB, that uses decimal numbers rather than hexadecimal numbers, and it looks like this. Each of the 3 values represents a color component, and each can have a decimal number value from 0 to 255. The first number represents the amount of red, the second is green, and the third is blue. These colors are exactly the same as hex, but with a different syntax and a different number system. In general, hex and RGB color representations are equivalent, which you choose as a matter of personal taste. That said, it's good to choose one and be consistent throughout your CSS because it's easier to compare hex to hex and RGB to RGB. In style CSS, find the hex value 8F BC8F and change it to that. Okay, this should be this one, this dark sea green. Find the hex value 2 rail 5. This is the Sienna, I think. Oh, I didn't like that. 884513. Hex and RGB. The hexadecimal and RGB color system can represent many more colors than the small set of CSS named colors. We can use this new set of colors to define our web page's style. In both hex and RGB, we have 3 values, one for each color. Each can be one of 256 values, specifically 256 by 256 by 256. So 16,777, or 16,777,216. That is the amount of colors we can now represent. Compare that to the roughly 140 named CSS colors. Recall that we started with named colors, converted them to hex, and then converted some of the hex colors to RGB. Unless we made a mistake, all of the colors should still be the same way visually. Let us use our broaden palette to make some more refined color choices. In the dot green rule in style CSS, change the background color to these. Yeah, change it. Oh, yeah, that was the original. Okay, so I didn't notice a difference. Let's do the same. The dot light rule, change the background color. In the dot city rule, Vienna. This one should be changed. Okay, so it's red. Okay, there we go. It's a little different there. Nice. The Italian. Okay. Oop. Done. Okay. Run the code one more time. These new colors are a lot closer to the real life color of each type of coffee. How does the subtle difference feel? Feels good. I'd never want to drink green beans. That looks horrible. Hue, saturation, and lightness. The RGB color scheme is convenient because it's very close to how computers represent colors internally. There's another equally powerful system in CSS called the Hue, Saturation, Lightness Color Scheme, abbreviation HSL. The syntax for HSL is similar to the decimal form of RGB, though it differs in important ways. The first color or number represents the degree of the hue and can be between 0 and 360. The second and third numbers are percentages, representing saturation and lightness respectively. Here's an example. So color, HSL 120, 60%, 70%. Use the first number. It refers to an angle on a color wheel. Red is 0 degrees, green is 120, blue is 240, and then back to red at 360. You can see an example of a color wheel below. Saturation refers to the intensity or purity of the color. The saturation increases towards 100% as the color becomes richer. The saturation decreases towards 0% as the color becomes grayer. Lightness refers to how light or dark the color is. Halfway or 50% is normal lightness. Imagine a sliding dimmer on a light switch that starts halfway. Sliding the dimmer up towards 100% makes the color lighter, closer to white. Sliding the dimmer down towards 0% makes the color darker, closer to black. HSL is convenient for adjusting colors. In RGB, making the color a little darker may affect all three color components. In HSL, that's as easy as changing the lightness value. HSL is also useful for making a set of colors that work well together by selecting various colors that have the same lightness and saturation but different hues. In the browser is a simple page with different colored rectangles. In the style CSS, modify the lightness of the background color of the class selector midground to be 25%. Okay. Got a lot darker. Change the saturation of the background color of the foreground class to 50%. Change the hue of the body selector's background color to 240 degrees. Opacity and alpha. All of the colors we've seen so far have been opaque or non-transparent. When we overlap two opaque elements, nothing from the bottom element shows through the top element. In this exercise, we'll change the opacity or the amount of transparency of some colors so that some or all of the bottom elements are visible through a covering element. To use opacity in the HSL color scheme, use HSL-A instead of HSL, and 4 values instead of 3. For example, the first 3 values work the same as HSL. The fourth value, which we have not seen before, is the alpha. This last value is sometimes called opacity. Alpha is a decimal number from 0 to 1. If alpha is 0, the color will be completely transparent. If alpha is 0. If alpha is 1, the color will be opaque. The value of half transparent would be 0.5. You can think of the alpha value as the amount of the background to mix with the foreground. When a color's alpha is below 1, any color behind it will be blended in. The blending happens for each pixel. No blurring occurs. The RGB color scheme has a similar syntax for opacity, RGBA. Again, the first 3 values work the same as RGB, and the last value is the alpha. Here's an example. A little unconventional, but still worth mentioning, is how hex colors can also have an alpha value by adding a 2-digit hexadecimal value to the end of the 6-digit representation, or a 1-digit hexadecimal value to the end of a 3-digit representation. You can change the opacity of a hexadecimal color. Hex opacity ranges from 00 transparent to FF opaque. Alpha can only be used with HSL, RGB, and hex colors. We cannot add the alpha value to name colors like green. There is, however, a named color word for 0 opacity, transparent. It's equivalent to RGB A0000, and it's like any other color keyword. Give the element with class foreground an alpha value of 0.6. Remember to change the HSL to HSLA. So dot foreground, we want HSLA, and we want another value of 0.6. Cool. Give the element with class midground an alpha value of 0.4. So change it to HSLA, and it is 0.4. Cool. Modify the body rules backgrounds to have a value of RGBA. 0.2550 and 0.1. Oh, wow. Right, review. We've completed our extensive tour of the colors in CSS. Let's review the key information we've learned. There are 4 ways to represent color in CSS. Named colors. There are more than 140 named colors, which you can review here on the MDN. Hexadecimal or hex colors. Hexadecimal is a number system that has 16 digits, 0 to 9, followed by A to F. Hex values always begin with hash and specify values of red, blue, and green using hexadecimal numbers such as 23F41A. 6-digit hex values with duplicate values for each RGB value can be stored to 3 digits. RGB colors use the RGB syntax with 1 value for red, 1 value for blue, and 1 value for green. RGB values range from 0 to 255 and look like this. And HSL stands for hue, the color itself, saturation, the intensity of the color, and lightness, how light or dark a color is. Hue ranges from 0 to 360, and saturation and lightness are both represented as percentages like this. You can add opacity to color in RGB and HSL by adding a 4th value A, which is represented as a percentage. Great job. Feel power to add a bit of color to each of your projects. All right. Following CSS code attempts to set the text color of a paragraph using a named color, but fails to do so. Why? Because bold is not a color. Following CSS code attempts to set the color of a paragraph using an HSL color, but fails to do so. Why? It's got negative values. Following CSS code attempts to set the color of a paragraph using an RGB color, but fails to do so. Why? Because FF is hex. What is the 4th value inside RGBA control? It is the opacity or alpha value. How could this code be rewritten but guarantee the same appearance in the browser? Which of the following 2 CSS properties are used to set an HTML element's foreground color and background color, respectively? Color and background color. What is one limitation of named CSS colors that hexadecimal and RGB colors do not have? Okay, named colors are limited to a specific set. 7 correct. Wicked. All right, next up we have a project, so I will see you guys in that video.